This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia. Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source. On Send Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM. And Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then. All right, Houston, this is Gilbert Garcia with another tip from me. Talk, inspiration, and prayer. And, we had such a good show last week. And, of course, we had Miss Cindy Siegel, the head of the Republican Party here in Harris County, who's a good friend of mine, former mayor of Bel Air, and was on the Metro board when I was chairman. And then, of course, we also have Mr. Rick Figueroa, who's really an entrepreneur. He started his own business, but he's been in the financial advisory business for, golly, since time began, but at least 30, 40 years. I brought Rick back. So, Rick, welcome to the show. And I wanted to bring Rick back because I don't think we did it justice. I want to go into what does it mean to be if you're a citizen, and how do you save money? How do you develop wealth? How do you hire someone to help you manage your wealth? All of those things, because I remember when I was young, Gilbert Garcia, and while it might have been decades ago, here I am. And it's like, if you don't start saving early, and if you don't invest your money wisely early, you're going to then, really be in a bad way. Right. And I want to talk all about that, but I want to start with something else because I was not aware. And Rick, you're just, number one, you're just got so many wonderful things that you do. You're on the Herman Hospital board and so many other things. But what fascinates me is I did not realize how close you were to the president of El Salvador. And you were just telling me that you were down there and you had a private meeting with him and a very small group of people to talk about how to get more capital into the country. And everyone knows here on A Tip from Gilbert that we've talked a lot about El Salvador because it is really outside the Mexicans or Mexican Americans here in the Houston area. It's the second largest group, which is the El Salvadorians. And because they all came through and escaped during the guerrillas in the 80s, they all came in with dual citizenship. So it's very unique. And I know the president is young, aggressive, and he's, I believe, the first country that started allowing Bitcoin as one of their currencies. And of course, what a good move that was. Who would have thought? But at the end of the day, I think even if it had not been a great move, the key is he's trying to do things unique and different because he's very energetic. And of course, he cracked down on all the gangs. And I remember people saying that it wasn't safe. Now it's completely opposite. Right. Tell us about what it was. So you met with the president, and what was he like? Because he's a young man, right?
Great guy. First of all, thank you.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
He is an amazing guy. Young, charismatic, very innovative. President Bukele, he is one of those guys that you see once in a lifetime for a country. It's just one of those innovators, those guys that are looking to play the long game and are willing to do what it takes for the long game, not the short game. And so when he decided to take on the gangs, I think the murder rate, and this, don't quote me on this, but I think it was like 170 for every 1,000 people. Now it's like 16 for every 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's dramatically lowered.
I walked around the city. I interviewed a couple of ladies, and one lady who was waiting for the bus looked at me, and I just said, hey, and I said, tell me the difference of the country since President Bukele took over. And she started crying. And she said, I used to have to pay a toll to get to the bus from my house. The gangs would charge me, toll to walk through the neighborhood. And my kids could never play in that park.
Wow.
And now my kids can play in that park. I come to work. I can work without it. And so he's done an amazing job. But this is the thing that I told the president. I said, look, I said, scripture tells us that when you clean a house or a person of a demon, if you don't fill it with something good, 7 times comes back worse.
Mm.
And so I said that you've cleaned a house, but you have to fill it with something good. You have to be able to bring some economic development. You have to pour into your people, the education, the training. You have to be able to fill that vacuum with something bigger than what those gang members were doing. And so if you don't do that, it's going to get 7 times worse than it was prior to your taking over.
Wow. And does he speak English? I mean, that's a silly question, but
absolutely,
he does, right?
Better than me. So he speaks, which isn't a high hurdle. It's not a high hurdle.
No, I understand, but no, it's amazing, and he's got that movie star look. You know, he's just handsome. He's tall. He's got a lovely wife.
Beautiful wife.
I think they have a young child, right?
Yes, they do.
Wow. Well, I just am amazed by that. I do want to go back to all your trip to Mar-a-Lago, et cetera, in a minute. First, talk to me about how does one begin to save money? You know, I mean, where does one begin, and when is it too early to save money? And, you know, just give us a quick view about what should people be doing to save money? What are some things they can do now to get in a better financial position? Just give us an overview. What would you say to somebody?
So the one thing about money is it doesn't change whether you have $10 million or $10. It doesn't change. The strategies are consistent. And so, you know, money is mentioned more times in the Bible than any other word.
No kidding.
Yes. I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 times. It's
wow.
Crazy. Yeah, it's amazing how many times. And it talks about the power. And one of the reasons why I think is because most people look at money or mammon, as Scripture calls it, as an end, not a means. They're looking for an end into it. And so it becomes the God that they choose. And so one of the things to do is to always look at money as a strategy to achieve something, not to be the means in itself. So I think that one of the things that I tell people all the time is, number one, know why you want to gather money, right? Not to, you know, what do you want to do with this money? Well, I want to grow it. Well, that's not a reason. Mm-hmm. Or I want to be rich. Well, that's not a reason.
Right.
Well, I want to buy a house. Okay, that's a reason. I want to retire. All right.
That's a reason.
I want to pay. Yeah, right. There's got to be a reason. And when people lose the reason, the money becomes the God. Right.
Interesting.
And so you have to be very cognizant of the reason why you're doing what you're doing. I want to send my kids to college. I want to buy a business or whatever it is. And so that is the first and foremost.
So it's kind of like a goal.
A goal. Absolutely.
Okay, keep going. I got it.
The goal has to be stated, and it's got to be clear, and it's got to be something worth acknowledging, right? Because sometimes people don't understand it. They're just they're working to live. Right. And that's it. And that's not a goal. That's just an existence. And I understand that, you know, my mother washed dishes for 36 years in a hospital kitchen. I get the fact that paycheck to paycheck, but even at a paycheck to paycheck, trying to achieve something incrementally is important. So there's 4 things I would tell people to do. Well, number 1 is first, take advantage of any savings plan where you don't have to pay taxes. That's number 1, which is 401ks, any deferred comp plan, anything that would be advantageous. So if a company, even if you have to put 1% of your money away or 2%, some sort of incremental part of your salary before taxes is such a big savings, right? So in other words, what I'm saying is that if I wanted to save $100 in a checking account, it would cost me $120 or $130 because I have to pay taxes before I get that money. But if I want to save $100 in a 401k, it just cost me $100. So I'm already making money there by definition. Number 2 is to have a budget. Right. And I don't care how small of a budget, but to have some controllable monitoring of what you spend and where you spend things. Marketers, TV commercials, they're not your friend. Black Friday is not your friend. Right. Sales Monday, Cyber Monday is not your friend. These guys aren't there to help you when you retire. They're there to take your money away from you. OK. And so the discipline of having a budget is so critical. Because you can say, all right, I'm going to spend $10 on this thing, and that's it. And so you know that that's your limit. And even if you have to, I've even had to, and these are people who are college educated, very well known, and they have to put cash in envelopes because their discipline isn't where it needs to be. So they'll put money there. And so that's important. Number 3 is to reward yourself, right? I had a couple come in one time, and then they were on the verge of just struggling with their marriage, and because she loved to travel. And so basically he saw travel as a big liability as opposed to an asset. And so finally, he's a very budget conscious guy. He knows budgets. He looks at budgets. And so I said, why don't you just put a travel budget? He goes, I would love that. That way I know what I'm going to spend, and it's not surprising to me, and I can enjoy my vacation.
Yeah, and build around it.
Exactly.
Save around it. Yeah.
Exactly. So that idea of rewarding yourself, and she was just looking for some ability for the family to get away and spend time together. It wasn't about the money. The location was that she saw when he pushed back on the travel budget, it was to her pushing back on the family.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you probably saved their marriage. Because sometimes we're communicating, but we're not listening, or whatever that saying is. I mean, you're not just, you're not really getting to the core of it all. I think that's wonderful. Let me ask you this. When should someone start? I mean, some people are like saying, I hear you, but like, how do I even begin? How do I begin with a budget? How do I begin saving money?
So there's a saying, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When's the second best time?
Today. Bingo.
Today. And it is today, right now, as you're listening to this program, to sit there and write down a budget and to say, okay, I'm going to put in, $10 every day or every week or every month, and I'm going to put it away and I'm going to save it for X, or I'm going to do something with it. Again, to have that goal, to have some sort of goal. And nobody should tell you what that is. You should own the goal, right? I'm not going to tell clients that you should, retire at 65 or 55 or whatever. Or those are personal achievements and those are very individualistic ideas. And so don't let anybody tell you that, but the discipline to achieve it is very systematic and very consistent.
Well, hold that thought. We have an Yvette on the line. Yvette, is there an Yvette on the line?
Yes, this is Yvette.
Yvette, what do you got? You got me, a tip from me with Rick Figueroa. We're talking about saving money and really building wealth and preparing for what your goals might be. Travel, buying a house, retirement. What do you got for us?
Wonderful. Yes, no, I'm so happy that you're on the show today, Rick. Just a crucial time in my life, with having a 2-year-old. And I'm just curious, your thoughts. I've been looking at different options in regards to college savings plans. There's 529s, and you can roll them over now into an IRA from what I've been reading. Worth it or not? What do you think?
I think 529s are a great tool. They're a great tool. The tax-free ability is significant, and it will help you in the long run. There are restrictions. This isn't money that you put into and you buy a car with, right? Sometimes people get excited about the idea of a 529 account, and then they pull it. This is something that you're fairly assured to use for college education. Now, remember, you can use it for yourself as well. It doesn't have to be your child. So even if you overfund it for some set, or the child gets a scholarship, you can pull money out equal to the scholarship. But let's say that you wanted to go to some vocational school or a master's degree or something. You could do that, or you or your husband or somebody in your family could use it. And also, you can also relay that back down to your grandchildren if you wanted to.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
So you can push that off until the deferment. So one of the things that we did is my son, he got a scholarship, and so I was able to defer a little bit. And so my wife and I are now going to use that for our grandkids. And so it'll be a perpetual fund.
What a beautiful thing.
Tax-free.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, we're going to have to talk later, me and you. But Yvette, hopefully that answers your question. You got a follow-up or anything?
No, this is wonderful to hear. I've been reading so much about it, and knowing that information now makes me definitely want to look at investing in something to that effect. If you're involved with it, I would like to talk more. So I appreciate it. We'll have to look to be in touch with you.
And Yvette, you said you had a 2-year-old. Well, at one time my Juju was 2 years old, and now she's 18. And I'm just I'm already crying about her getting ready to go to college. And of course I want her to go, but I'm crying. I already told her wherever she goes, I'm going to move in next door. Either that or I'm going to be like, I would say I'm going to be her roommate, but she'll say, Dad. But Yvette, thank you for calling in. We have another caller real quick. We're going to jump right to a Brian. Brian, are you there? Brian, what do you got for us? Brian, what do you got, pal?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're talking about saving money, building wealth, being disciplined, budgets, having a goal, whether it's retiring, travel, buying a house. What do you got for us, pal?
Yeah, well,
Brian, what do you got? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask where real estate falls into the equation.
Let's talk about that. What says you there, Rick? I mean, is that a good investment for people these days?
Real estate it's a relative term, because what is it a good investment for somebody who's $1,000 in debt or $5,000? No, maybe not, or $100,000 in debt.
Yeah.
But it's a good investment for two reasons. One, I mean, well, real estate's in two categories. Number one is your personal real estate, like your house. That is an investment, but that's an emotional investment. Okay. And especially if you're married, your spouse, you want a place that you're not trying to. Now, there are people who are very comfortable with buying a house, living in it, flipping it. But for the most part, emotionally, homes are directed by school districts, or directed by certain things, neighbors, comfort, or safety, those types of things. So, you want to buy a house that is going to appreciate in value, that you're going to live in, but also that you're happy to be with. So, you don't, and I do not let the mortgage industry tell you how much to spend on a house. Okay.
Well, here's my situation. I inherited a house. My house is paid for, but I have, my dad has rental properties that are going to come to me. So I'm like, do I sell them or just keep them, renting them out?
Those are great inflationary hedges. Rental properties are great because you can adjust the lease every year. So you can, as inflation goes up, and real estate usually responds well in inflationary markets. They're great incomes as long as you've done the math and the spreadsheet as far as how much rent you're charging versus the property taxes, the maintenance, the upkeep, the vacancy. If you do that, those are amazing investments. And I would tell you that you should hold on to them. You're going to have to talk to an attorney about your step-up basis and value. Make sure that when you're a state attorney, when you went and how you passed it off to you, and what the structure was, or what he did have it in an LLC, or if you had it in his individual name. So you'll probably need to consult with a tax attorney about that. But for the most part, if they're renting and they're creating income for you, I would hang on to them. That's my 2 cents.
Brian, you heard it here first, pal. Thank you for calling in.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
So let's go back to a second. So how does one, begin with a budget? Go back to when 20 years ago to build that, plant that tree, and then the other time is now. When's the best time? For someone that just says, golly, I'm just living sort of out of my own little cash register, and how do I begin a budget?
So I tell people, let's list everything that you would like to do. Okay. Let's start off, and you just list it all. I want to buy a home. I want to go out to dinner. I want to have a nice car. I want this. I want that. Put all your wants. There's nothing wrong with listing out those wants. Again, it goes to the goal, and then you rank those wants. Okay. Well, how bad do you want that house versus a car? How bad do you want to be debt free? Right. And then look at that versus having a car or house, right? Because debt is something you have to put on. I want to pay off my debt. That's a big deal. So once you rank these things and you look at them and you feel comfortable with them, then you look at your income. And when you get to when there's no more dollars, everything below that line is no longer going to be paid for. You ignore those things, right? Until that top line number gets bigger. Right. And I think that's important. Now, you're allowed to shuffle and move things around. If you're having a baby and, all of a sudden you got to reshuffle that out a little bit, you have to give up something but, Ramsey, Dave Ramsey, he's known for these, financial piece, and he's a big anti-debt guy. I'm not a huge debt is not bad. It's like anything else. It's bad when used poorly, right? And so be smart, be strategic about debt, right? Make sure that you do. Now, credit card debt typically is a horrible thing, but mortgage debt is not a bad thing as long as you control it and you're getting a good rate and you feel like your house is appreciating at a decent rate, right? And so I tell people that the mortgage industry, I think, goes up to 30% of your income. They'll let you. I say 20. 20 is probably a better number. And I would give yourself 10. The one thing I always tell people is pay yourself first. Put your savings in first, because your mortgage company, your utility bill, your car payments, those guys aren't going to take care of you when you get older. So you got to really pay yourself first. Right. Put your 10% in. Laura and I, my wife and I tithe. We put our 10% to the church. We put our 10% into the savings, and then everything else starts flushing everything out. That's just how I do it. And so I think. So if you're making $10,000 a year, put $1,000
to yourself.
Absolutely.
Savings or something.
Some savings. And if you can do it in a 401k that matches, even better. And if you can do it in pre-tax, that's even better. So that's why I always tell people to try to maximize your 401k first, because you can do it pre-tax. And if they have a matching program and you guys have a great opportunity here, then you're doubling your money, basically.
And what about when you think about all these credit cards and people say, I got a credit card for this or that? Tell us about the risk of these credit cards, because you have people that have gas cards, so many cards, and I've seen people they have like a whole thing full of credit cards.
Right.
I mean, what's the danger in that? Isn't there a lot of danger to that?
It is probably America's biggest. Next to obesity, it is the financial debt is the biggest obesity we have, and it is something that we have been marketed into. Instant, Black Friday,
right.
Like I talked about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And there's people going on the web right now buying,
spending money they don't have.
Exactly, and when and this is the thing, Gilbert. This is what's so important, and this upset me. I read this. I think the average American spends 10 times more time researching their vacation than they do their financial wealth.
No kidding.
Yes, 10. So to go to Mexico, to Cancun, you're going to spend 20 hours on that, when you'll spend 2 hours or less on your financial.
Wow.
Spending time looking at the strategy, figuring out what credit card do I need to get rid of? What do I need to minimize? Do I need a credit card, right? Can I do this without a credit card? And you start seeing companies that know that credit cards are what I call invisible cash. Right. It's one thing when I pay you $100 cash, I'm seeing the $100 cash. It hurts a little bit. But when I say credit card, I don't even see the money.
It's like it's free somehow.
Exactly.
Until you see, wait a minute.
Exactly.
It's 18% or 20%.
Exactly why Vegas uses chips, because they don't want you to realize how much you're losing.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's a very, all the chips look alike kind of. Yeah. And so if you were handing over hundreds of dollars of bills, you'd be like, wait a minute, you would take a breath, right? But no, when you're throwing chips out, it's just chips. It's play money. And so these games that play, these marketers understand the games that are played to consumers, and they're doing their job. They're just trying to sell their goods, and I don't blame them for that. Do your job and mark your barriers to what you need to do, and control your budget and control your spending. Because if you don't, you will allow somebody who has no interest in your financial well-being take control of your life, and you'll be enslaved. It's an enslavement. Credit card debt is an enslavement. And I will tell you, I've talked to many people who are in debt, and they feel like there is zero freedom in their life.
Now, when you see these things that say, call us 1-800-DEBT-FREE. We'll help you consolidate your debt and all that. What's the scam behind that? Do you know what I'm talking about? These things about, like, I'll help you with your debt.
Yeah. Typically what they're trying to do is prey on consumers who are ignorant to the process, right? If you're in a debt situation, you can call the credit card company and be very frank with them and say, look, I owe you $1,000. I'm not going to get it. What deal can you give me? What can I do to make this remedy go away so you don't have to write this off? And they'll move on these situations. They'll move on these situations. You start seeing those types of things. You'll be surprised how quickly they'll turn you and say, hey, look, we're willing to, take 80 cents, 60 cents on the dollar. You never know, but it doesn't take, it's not complicated to ask, right? Now, if you're in a severe situation where bankruptcy or some other scenario is playing out, you probably need to seek professional help. But for the most part, trying to go directly to the people that you owe and saying, look, this is what I can do. This is what I can pay. This is how I can pay your deal. They're willing to do it because they don't want to lose that money.
Very interesting. So Houston, you heard it here first that, you know what? It doesn't take much to ask, and all they can tell you is no.
Absolutely.
And so ask, can I work this out? Can I, get us some relief or something? Can you not charge me interest for the next 6 months or something?
They'll move on their line.
Very interesting. Very, very. Thank you for that. So what about this? So is there, I guess the right answer is 10% is the right amount everyone should save. Is that about right? More plus or minus?
It is kind of like it's a bogey. It's not, everybody has their own lives, right? I always tell, it's important. And I caution that we're on this show right now.
Yep.
It's never good to give financial advice when you don't know the details of the individual that you're giving advice to.
Amen. That's right.
So I'm saying this in general. There are people who are severely in debt, and there are people who are way, 10% is a good rule of thumb.
Yep.
And to say, how much should I save if I'm working along the norm, that's a good average.
That's probably then what happens when someone comes to you, because you deal with individuals.
Right.
Someone comes to you, the first thing you probably do is, all right, let's, tell me about yourself. Like you go to a doctor and the first thing they do is they give you a whole thing about, have you had this or that? And well, that's kind of what you do. You first start with, let me get the information I need to know to understand where you are with your finances, and then you can come up with a plan. Is that pretty much right?
So and let me take that to extreme, because I just had my physical. This is funny that you said that. The doctors will tell you, okay, your blood pressure should be here, your body mass index should be here. This is where your cholesterol should be. This is the norm. And they give you, and this is the thing this is why I started the wealth management business that I did. I feel like most people who come to me have a minimum of $1 million. Okay. And so they'll come to me and they'll say, okay, Rick, here's some money, go invest it. So a typical wealth manager will go, okay, we're going to give you a 60-40 portfolio.
Yeah.
All right. 60-40 portfolio, stocks, bonds, cash, whatever. And here you go. And they'll go, okay. So if I got that money, then they go, okay, well, run me a plan. And we'll run a Monte Carlo analysis, which is kind of statistical analysis saying that you're going to die at 87, your wife will die at 89, and you're going to have this much money when you die, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Those two things are now going to be replicated by AI. Artificial intelligence will be able to direct you on how to build a portfolio. Artificial intelligence will be able to direct you on how your statistical analysis of how successful you'll be if you save this much and how much you will and when you're going to die statistically. That's AI. The problem with that, those two things are pressing in on the individual. They're like the doctor says, well, you should be within this range. The question is this: what do you want to be? Who are you? What are your principles and values? What do you believe? What do you know? And and I'll give you a great example. I had a guy when I was first starting out who was engineer at BP. He's making about $1.5 million, doing well.
It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. Huge amount of money. He comes to me, retires, and 2 weeks, his wife calls me up. She goes, I want to come see you today. I said, okay. I thought I did something wrong. And she walks in and she goes, get him out of my house. She says, right? Yeah. He's got millions of dollars. And I'm like, why are you telling me? He goes, he's building a spreadsheet for my grocery list. Get him out of my house. Oh my God. Right? And so I sat there and I said, well, what do you want to do? So you know what he does now? He works at Home Depot making $18.50 an hour. And he's never been happier in his career. Wow. Because when you go to Home Depot and you say, I want to build a doghouse, they'll send you, I don't know how, they'll send it to him. He'll put a spreadsheet together of all the material you need. Wow. And he's so happy. Wow. And so this idea of creating this wealth and then not knowing who you are after you created wealth, it's important. Again, the goal mentality is not different than when you have $10 versus you have 10 million. Yep. Not having a goal is the worst thing. I said, one of the saddest thing in the world, our mission statement is bringing your wealth to life with peace and purpose. The saddest thing on the planet is a man or a woman with all the money in the world, but no peace or purpose.
Wow. That is very profound. And I get it. And, as I'm in this stage of my life, you're giving me a lot to think about. And, one of the things that's on my mind, I know we have one or two callers. We'll get to them real quick in just 1 second. So hang on there. Is my daughter, of course, is applying for schools. And I have two that are now out. And I have one that's at LSU and he's a junior. My daughter now, the schools that she's looking at, and they're all, some of these schools soon. Hold on 1 second, whoever's on the line there. Some of these schools are going to top $100,000 a year, like in the next couple of years. Some of these schools are like, $80,000 a year. Yeah. Who can afford that? Think about that. Let's say you're there 4 years, and without going to be a doctor or without going to law school or anything, you're 4 years. If it's $80,000, that's $320,000 in debt, unless you got that kind of cash, which nobody does. That sounds so alarming, like so intimidating. What do you say to people that have young kids now to say, you got to get ready for this because the sticker shock is coming?
I think the paradigm has changed. I have 155 households, right, with $355 million in assets management. The top 10, half of them never went to college.
Very interesting.
Because they're welders, they're trash people, they're people who've done vocational jobs, did them well, built a company, sold it for several million. And so we sometimes preach that you have to go to college in order to be successful. And I think that there's some not truth to that.
Yeah.
I think that vocational trainings have been underutilized in this nation. The state, specifically the state, needs to understand that to grow, we need welders, we need AC guys, electricians, we need plumbers. And these guys are critical. I mean, and if you ever had your AC down in the summer, you'll do whatever. I mean, I've had guys who are making, 7 figures and are staying home because they don't want to miss the AC guy.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm thinking how ironic, 7-figure guys waiting on a guy who's making, but those guys are so I believe that we have sometimes decided to say, you have these students who spend $100,000 on a liberal arts degree and they're a barista at a Starbucks. Yeah, and I'm like, that's not the good use of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had Paul Puente, who's head of the trade unions, and I had him on the show about a year or two ago. I got to bring him back, and we talked all about this, which is, yes, college is great, but it may not be for everyone. And he talked about the pathway to becoming a plumber, electrician, an elevator service person. And what's amazing to me, they get paid very well. They have really good benefits, health benefits, 401k type pensions. And I thought to myself, really do the math between going to college and spending all this money versus getting to work and making money right away. And it's not so clear, especially if these schools price themselves out of existence.
Yeah.
If you're starting to say, imagine in our lifetime, it's going to be $100,000 a year to go to a lot of good private schools. And I don't just mean, Yale or, TCU or SMU or Baylor, Rice, some that are right here. And even then the state schools aren't cheap anymore. A&M, UT, they used to be something where you could, it was affordable. Not anymore.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? I mean, it's just kind of like, how did we get here?
I think the universities are starting to see that. I think the universities are, I chair Texas Department of Licensing Regulation. We govern 39 licenses. And you're starting to see universities coming to us about training programs. And I think that, I don't know if there was a marketing ploy to say that if you're a vocational worker, that you're not as smart as a college worker. I don't know when that played out, but I think people have realized that when you do what you're made to do and you do it well, success will follow quickly.
There you go.
I don't care where you're at.
Yeah. I always say, if you're happy and you love what you're doing, you're going to be successful.
Absolutely.
Whether it's monetarily or spiritually, either way, you're going to be successful. Hold on. We got a caller right now. Vicky, is there Vicky on there?
Yes, Vicky Cruz is here.
Oh, Vicky, how are you? Thank you for calling in again.
Hold on a second real quick. Hey, Gilbert, how's it going?
Good. You got me and Rick Figueroa. Hopefully you're listening to the show. We're talking about building wealth, about saving, about having goals, whether it's budgeting goals, going to college, building a house, retiring, all those things. What do you got?
You know what? I love it. Rick, listen, that's some amazing stuff. Let me tell you just a little bit about what we do. It's Mission One USA to bring the unity in the community, but we do that through the HERO program. And HERO is an acronym for helpful, encouraging, respectful, on task. And on the on task portion is where we teach our children. We go into apartment complexes, into the hardcore, into shelters, into churches, mosques. It's not about any sort of religious base or anything like that, although we do have a component on spirituality. We teach our children how to remain on task. We talk about finances. We talk to parents about these finances, provide them resources, provide them just the opportunity to empower their lives and enrich it in both, physical, whether it's spiritual, whether it's goals they have. So I've taken in my life coaching and everything to help these and to design this programming and to empower these homes and going into the anywhere, whether it's Webster, Clear Lake, Houston, or whether it's in Fifth Ward areas of the East End. We're everywhere around Harris County and beyond. We're going to Galveston, Gilbert.
That's soon. So great. Well, I have a great idea for a speaker.
Yes.
I'm looking at him.
I'll tell you, I want to tell you this, Vicky. You plucked a heartstring, right? I think one of the greatest tragedies that we've done in our city is our foster and orphan ministries and opportunities to succeed and use that resource. The kids that are being aged out of the system have to have a job to succeed.
Yes.
There's the suicide rate, the drug rate is I think it's like 30%. It's horrible.
It's alarming.
And so these kids who have the most wealth on the planet, which is time.
Yes.
Gilbert and I can't, by the way, it's not 30 years. I've been here, only 27. By the way, you aged me a little bit. But Gilbert and I time, we don't have that.
Yeah.
And so they have that.
Exactly.
And that resource has never been told to them. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is trying to get churches and the state to be involved in training these kids. So when they launch out of these programs, these orphan programs, to go into their foster kid programs, to go into the workforce and be able to sustain themselves. And I'm going to tell you right now, we the AC repair guys and the electricians are two vocations that they can take them and they can make $30,000 to $40,000 coming out as an 18-year-old and at least have an apartment, a place to live, and some substance and have some value. And I think it's tremendous when you look at ministries like yourself, like yours, because I think we need to, and I said this on actually KSBJ radio. I said there were like 6,000 churches in the city of Houston. Okay. There are 8,000 orphans and foster kids. If every church just took one kid, we could eliminate, the responsibility, the solvability of this problem, or to be able to serve and because those kids, there are such our most valuable resource. And there's not a road, a highway, a building, of governmental service that will expand or serve us in the future as well as those kids will.
Amen. That is
Absolutely.
so true.
And Rick, you know what? The program Hero, we basically teach the children how to be helpful, encouraging, respectful, on task at home, school, in the community, but most importantly themselves. When I was in the school district, I came out of corporate America doing project management, HR, centralizations, just huge, projects. But then I started finding the wealth, the generational wealth, making money. And I said, man, last year I was on the verge of buying me another house and another house. But God stopped me and said, do you want to make money or leaders?
Amen.
And I'm like, okay, we've got so much time on earth. I said, okay. He's like, get the Hero program, launch it. Because I launched it in school during COVID. And the kids were like, fourth grade, talking about suicide. Like, I don't want to live no more, Miss Grace.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, what the heck?
How are we failing these kids?
Exactly. And so now I'm like, we've got to do something to be helpful and teach these kids. And then when we do it, they're like, we have purpose. And this year alone, we've done stuff for the veterans, for the seniors. We make cards. And right now we're helping Poncho Claus. So I came out to a warehouse and all the way in Timbuktu past Katy and Sealy. And I'm like working and finding partners. And these kids have been wrapping boxes and they're like, no, we're going to help Poncho. They're like Heroes Rescuing the Day. Yesterday, we were at a toy drive with the baseball team, collecting now, and the community, Gilbert, the way we're all coming together, it's like, come on, he's going to have a second surgery, just FYI, Poncho is. And so the thing is, so we teach kids how to encourage, take them into senior homes. And then, so we just want to bring the values back. I'm like, listen, everybody's fighting about not bringing prayer into school. How about we just bring the values in and God will do the rest, And so we teach that. If kids do cadence, they learn to respect differences, how to respect themselves and set boundaries. I was one of those kids that was basically in a bad situation, many bad situations, that I lost shame as a young girl. And so I go back into the schools to say, parents, relationship, build your children's confidence. And so anyway,
you know what? I want you on the show. Next week I have, for everyone listening, I'm going to have Terrence Fontaine, who a lot of you know him. He used to be Mayor Bill White's, one of his main chief of staffs. And then he was on the Metro board. And then he was one of the senior execs on the Metro team when I was chairman. And then, of course, now he's over at TSU. And he's done something unique where he has worked with, I believe it's United Airlines, and they have a pilot school at TSU. And a lot of these students are going and they're coming out with their pilot's license.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And of course, he's done more to create more people of color pilots than anyone. And so we're going to have Terrence Fontaine next Monday. Vicki, why don't you come the following Monday?
I'm down. Just,
Dude, let's go.
Well, can I?
Hey,
Vicky,
hey,
let me
but
tell
I
you
need
something
you-
real quick, Vicky. That I have every year. I have about 100 inner city kids. Most of these are juvenile felons that are locked up at the ranch in Brenham. Right. I would love to bring your kids out. You're welcome to join. Youth for Christ and Young Life brings these kids out, and we love on them for a day. And I could tell you there's stories that are just amazing, and it's just for them to see beyond what they know, right? If you allow me, I'm gonna tell a quick story.
I love it. I love it.
So there was a little girl, and Vicky, you're gonna appreciate this. This little girl, she's 15 years old, and she was on my picnic table at the ranch. And I went in the house, and I came back like 2 hours later because the kids were running around, and she hadn't moved. And I looked at the one of the counselors, and they go, "Well, we don't know." She just kind of sitting there. So I put my head on the table next to hers, and we just kind of looked at each other. And she goes, and it was a 15. I don't know what a 15-year-old girl thinks. So I'm like in unknown territory here.
Yeah.
And so her one eyebrow raises up, and I look at her, and I go, "Look, I got a secret." And she goes, kind of like, "What?" And she goes, "I go, I own the place." And she looks at me, and I go, "I know I don't look like I should, but I do own the place." And she started laughing, and she goes, "Okay." And I said, "Come on." So I was going to walk her to the barn to show her the eggs and the chickens, because these city kids don't know what chicken eggs are. And that was my trick. That's all I know. And so the counselors are walking. So as we were walking to the barn, one of my heifers started running to me, and her name is Reba. And she thinks when I'm walking to the barn, she's getting fed.
Yeah.
So she came running, and this girl, Emily is her name, she starts getting scared. I said, "Emily, no, don't be scared. It's just Reba." And she looked at me, and I said, "You don't know the story of Reba." I said, "Reba," this is where it gets interesting. I said, "Reba was a twin. She was born on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Her mother and her sister walked across the pasture. And usually when you have twins, the mother sometimes ignores one and put the betterment of the other. So she was fixing to die. The vultures were on top of her, picking at her. And my daughter saw her. So we ran out there and got her, picked her up. And we started, loving on her and everything else, and fed her milk and everything. And she grew up. And I said, Reba was not wanted by her mom, by her sister, and by her own kind, but she was found by us. She was found by us. Wow. And I said, Reba is now the queen of the ranch. Every cow on my ranch will be sold except for her. She'll die on my. She is now the queen. And I looked at little girl Emily. And I said, "You feel like Reba?" And her and Reba made this magical look at each other. And she was not wanted. Well, come to find out, she was. Her mom was a crack addict. Her dad left and married another woman. She was left at home, and her boyfriend had convinced her to be a prostitute. She's a 15, pure little, and she had no worth. She had no value. And it was just so exponentially. It was one of those God moments where I was just like moving out of the way, and this little heifer and this little girl were looking at each other, and they were understanding where they both had been.
Oh my God. It's almost like their souls touched.
Yes, it did. It was amazing.
I mean, that's a religious moment.
And there's so many, and you have no idea, Rick, how many people struggle with this, even adults, even as children. Hey, how can I get a hold of you, Rick?
My website.
Where do you have the website? Yeah. Do we have the website? Did you tell us? What's the website again?
We'll put it on there for sure, Vicky, and I'll make sure that you get in. Christian does my schedule, so I would love to help you out anyway. And Jonathan Frost is at Youth for Christ. He's one of the guys that brings these kids, and these are incarcerated kids. So these are amazing kids, and so I'd love any way I can help you. I know we got to move on and talk about financials, but any way I can help you, Vicky.
Yes.
There you go. We have the website. It's there on there for everyone to see. And what is it? Just read it to us real quick. What's the website?
patronpartners.com.
Patronpartners.com.
Right.
So you guys got it, and all that. You get your phone number and everything's there. How to reach you, your email. It's all in there.
Yes, everything's in there.
Okay, wonderful. Vicky, next week. Not next week. The next week.
Okay, hey, and then also the 17th, put on your calendar. We're going to have that big, the Heroes Meet Hero, where the heroes, the baseball team is given to other heroes that are less fortunate. And, but the less fortunate ones are everybody has been working together, all these heroes to help Pancho, but they're all helping each other now. There's some amazing things that are happening to reciprocate giving among the children, where all these different communities are coming together. So, put it on your calendar if you're available the 17th, or both of you guys. Join us, 3827. I'll post that too on Mission One USA.
Wonderful. And I'll have you on the show. Thank you for calling in, as always, Vicky. I had one of those. Thank God bless you. Before we go to Sarah, who I saw on there next, I had one of those moments. A good friend of mine, Hector Carreño, who's not with us, as we all know, he asked me to go speak at a school. And when he asked me, I always like to go no matter what. And he says, and they're all, people of color, et cetera. he did not give me much background. And I went, and then I realized these are the students that are in like alternative school. And this is really like the end of the road for them. Meaning if they don't turn their life, GV's the next thing for them, right? Juvenile hall, right? And I remembered speaking to these kids about a lot of the same things we're talking about. And afterwards, a lot of kids came to talk to me and so forth. And one kid stuck around and really came to talk to me. And then he gave me a big hug. And I saw the teachers and they were crying. And I was thinking, oh my God, did I overstep my bounds or something? And then he left and they said, Mr. Garcia, he never talks to anyone. He's homeless. And I mean, my heart just, and they said, you touched him. Anyways, I had one of those moments before, and, you feel so sad, but then on the other hand, you also feel so wonderful that you were able to touch somebody and hopefully inspire them to think differently and have some self-esteem where they can then do something great or different or change the pathway of their lives.
Absolutely.
So I love that story of Reba. I think it's a beautiful story. Let's go to the next. I think we had a Sarah. Sarah, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Sarah,
how are y'all doing?
We're doing great. What do you got for us on A Tip From Me with Mr. Rick Figueroa?
So I was just listening in. I'm curious. I have 2 young kiddos. Rick, what would be your best advice as far as savings account, saving for the future, like a high interest savings account, a 529? What are your tips in regards to that?
So it starts off with a goal. So Sarah, let me give you, I'm gonna kind of left hook you with this thing in a minute. But as far as the goal, if you're saving, if you're teaching them to save for themselves, a simple side account to your checking account is great. And so you can even tell them, I'll match you. So you tell your child, if you put $1,
great idea.
If you put $1 away, I'll put another $1 away.
Yeah.
And so those are great incentives. So they're learning the matching principle, right? Yeah. So none of them. So that's a big deal. If you're saving for education, 529s are great. Opportunities for you. Those the 529s are great. They have, again, the restrictions, but they're free, tax free. So if you're trying to do that, that's a great thing. So depending on what your goal is, if you're trying to teach them some stewardship responsibility by, when they save, you save, and those things are powerful. But I'll tell you one thing that I did for my kids, it was most Sarah, that you might appreciate, is about giving. So when my kids are now, in the 20s, but I think my oldest was 12, my youngest was like 8 or 6. And so I told them I'm going to give them each $1,000 to give away. Okay. I said, so I have 4 kids. And so I gave them each 1,000. I said, I'm going to give you a 5th 1,000, and that 5th 1,000 can be given away, but you all 4 have to agree on who to give that 5th 1,000 to. If you disagree at any point in time about it, or when presenting it, right, then all of it's gone. Okay. So they went off.
Well, they got to agree. They got to agree.
So this is what happened. It was during Christmas. And so they came back, and my youngest said, I want to build a playground for the church. I want to donate my playground. And then his son said, I want to give it to Compassion International. The other one said, I want to give it to Young Life. My oldest daughter said she wants to give it to one of the kids in the orphanage, right? And I said, okay, they all did the presentation. I said, what about the 5th 1,000? And so my youngest, the 2 alphas, and they said, well, I want to give it to the kids. I want to give it to the kids the playground. And my daughter goes, no, I want to give it to Young Life. And I said, all right, it's gone. And they looked at me and said, no, it's all gone. I said, all of that money's gone. And I said, I want you to know, because you 2 couldn't agree, Compassion International kids not going to go to summer camp. Your playground's not going to be built. Young Life's not going to get. And my wife was looking at me like I was just. But I mean, I hammered it home. Yeah. I mean, I was like, it's gone. And I want you guys to go think about that right now. Go. It's all gone. And they just walked out of there.
They were stunned.
And so, of course, my wife was like, what are you doing? I said, if they can't understand how to relate to each other right now, they'll never do it as an adult. Yeah. So 2 weeks later, I said, all right, come back to me. Let's see if we can do this again. And they all looked at me and go, Dad, it's a trick. I said, no trick. Same rules. So they came back. They did the presentation. They were going to do the presentation. We'd like to do the first $5,000 first. The last. I said, okay. So they said, we're going to give it to the kids in the church to build a playground. And I looked at my other daughter, go, "Are you good with that? How do you feel about that?" And go, "Dad, quit messing with us. We're all in agreement. We're all in agreement." And I said, "Are you sure? You want to argue about it?" No. That little lesson taught them how to deal with each other. We're not going to be around.
Yeah.
We're going to be old, right?
Yep.
They got to learn how to deal with each other, especially if they're going to inherit any wealth from us.
Yeah.
Why not learn at that age versus when they have thousands?
And plus, they'll learn how to compromise, how to work with people, which will go with them in the workplace and their lives.
So
I'm going to do that to my kids.
That's
a great idea.
Building that kind of, I don't know how old your kids are, but building those lessons now will encourage them. And I stole that from a client. And because he did it to his kids, and it was a great client because he had a special needs son, and the special needs son was the oldest one, and didn't trust the two younger ones, and so he understood it. So he was able to coach them to help him understand that they're there for him. And it was one of those that's about savings accounts one thing, but to teach your kid to manage those kids to manage their relationships on a money basis is tremendous.
Wow. I'm motivated. I'm motivated. Sarah, there you go. Are you ready to do it? Get those.
Yes, I'm writing this down.
No, that's a great idea.
No, this is great advice. Thank you so much.
Sarah, what else? Anything else you got for Mr. Rick or me?
No,
or Houston?
No, that was good. No, thank you guys so much.
Absolutely,
okay, thank you so much for calling in. We have another caller, and before we get to him, I want to go back. How long have you been in the business then?
I've been 27 years I've been in the wealth management business.
Okay, and so you were first with whom?
When I'm first at Merrill Lynch.
At Merrill Lynch.
I went to Merrill Lynch in 97, and then I left in 09 and went to UBS in 09, and then 09 to 2020. I was at UBS. In 2020, I started the firm. We started with 0 assets, and we're now number 18 in the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
It's overwhelming. It's scary because at 55 years of age, I took my own advice. I decided that I could have sold my book, Gilbert, and gone played with my cows.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. But I decided that I wanted to change wealth management. I want to change how people, to your point earlier, I want us to be focused on the principles and values of the person and the awakening of that versus just trying to run a portfolio for somebody or just trying to run a financial plan. And we have I don't know if you know that, but we have a hourglass in every one of our conference rooms. And it was a Norwegian poet, and I can't remember his name, Kierkegaard Norgen, I think. He said this, and this is one of the most profound statements. And I want this will be applicable to you.
I'm ready.
He goes, "What a tragedy that man had to invent the watch." And I'm paraphrasing this. What a tragedy that man had to invent the watch. But it had to be invented, for it had to drown out the macabre noise of grass growing over our grave. For the watch gives us the illusion of perpetuity, for it goes round and round. But it had to replace the hourglass because the hourglass was a strong and perfect picture of each grain of sand as it passes through the neck, that where time here is very limited.
Wow.
So that's the time.
Wow. That is so, I totally get it. What a beautiful thing. Like anything else, we're all on this planet one time.
That's it.
And, yes, we all want sort of material goods, but there's more to life than that. And it's about, I don't know, if you help others, it comes back to, tenfold or whatever. It really, really does. We have that caller. Let's get that caller. Thank you for that, Rick. Isidro, are you there?
Yes, what a man of great wisdom in your last caller. And Mayor, how are you doing?
Isidro, I'm doing very well, my friend. It's good to hear your voice. We're doing well. The firm's doing well. Everybody's healthy, all those things. So thank you for asking. And I've known Rick for a long time, but I'm so glad to have him on the show. I had him last week with Mayor Cindy Siegel, and he talked a lot about the Trump administration. He's one of those has made the decision. I'm going to be in the room when it happens, and I'm going to do my best to make it fruitful for everyone and inclusive for everyone. And I think that's a good thing. You got to be able to be on all sides of the aisle to really make change. So, and of course, he's a wealth manager. And so he's talking about that for us today. But what do you have for us? You got anything for me, Isidro, or anything for Rick?
Yes, absolutely. Many people, we had that 90th anniversary for Council 60, Lula Council 60 Saturday. And everyone asked for you. There was 2 national presidents at the table that they wanted you to sit with. It was Roman Palomares, the current national president, and also Hector Flores, whom you've met, and they both asked for you, and they were looking forward to exchange some ideas, but their main advice is keep doing what you're doing, and
well,
and
you
so
know,
you're
you're
just a great person.
I appreciate that. You know, you haven't, well, Houston hasn't heard me talk too much in the last week or two. I've talked a lot about my sister-in-law and her struggle with cancer. We got some very bad news last Monday. And so we've been hunkered down and all those things. After a year of chemo and everything else, they sent her home and said that there's nothing they can do with her now. So she's going to be entering, or she has entered hospice. She's 50 years old. 50 years old. And it's funny because, and I don't want to be a downer, but maybe I'll be an uplifter. You know, I've seen her in this year, and as her body has deteriorated, it's amazing how she's becoming more and more this glow of just goodness. And we'll stay up late because my wife goes to bed early, and my wife's brother will go to bed, and because they would stay at our house about every week or so, and she would stay up late with me, and we'd watch a terrible movie because she would do that for me because I would always watch terrible movies, and we would talk afterwards. And it's so interesting because I've never heard someone more so strong in their faith, no fear, and all she could talk about is either was her kids, my kids. And I just think about it. If I had been her, and I'm a mere mortal, I think I'd be mad at God. I think I'd be depressed. I think I'd become a terrible boss, a terrible husband. I don't know, but she inspired me just in all the goodness. So I haven't been, sort of out in the circuit the last week and a half, and it was a very difficult Thanksgiving for us, but I appreciate you. Make sure all my friends know I'm not abandoning anyone, but I had to take a quick pause, and, we're praying for her, and, we're praying for her to get through this holiday season.
Yes, and we will too. We will now have our prayers, life goes on. My mother is 95.
Wow.
And we spent a lot of time over Thanksgiving with her, and her mind comes and goes. But when I just the precious moments of just spending some time with our loved ones. But maybe it's all the time, but particularly during these times. And I know you'll take advantage of it. You're very humble. You said that you probably wouldn't be cussing at God. You wouldn't. You'd be on your knees giving him thanks and praise for everything that he's done for you. I know you.
Amen.
And so, yes, we've got an activity coming up on the 7th.
Go. What is it?
It's Salvadorian Day. And it is a magnificent event that I just encourage anybody. Hopefully you can make it. I'm going to try to make it with my wife, but I hope everyone that's listening to all your different states, through all your different stations, take advantage of that. Going out there and meeting another culture. Salvadorian culture is beautiful, and every just because we're Hispanic doesn't mean that we're all the same. There's a big difference between a Mexican, which I am, and Salvadorian, and I really appreciate the difference.
Amen. Well, see, let's get together because we're overdue. I'd love to see you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to sign off because we got only 1 minute. So thank you for calling me. I'm hugging you on cyberspace right now.
Yes, Mayor.
And I can't wait to see you, my friend.
Likewise. God bless.
Rick, remember that show Carol Burnett was like, I'm so glad we had this time to get, and now it's time to say so long. It's already been an hour.
That's crazy.
Isn't it crazy?
That's crazy.
I want you to say anything you want to say right there to that camera, and you're going to be talking to, several thousands, probably well over 100,000 Houstonians and people from Harris County about yourself, about your holiday, about your kids, about your business, everything.
So I would tell you that that poem that I recited about time, and the preciousness of it is the value of your commodity. Everything else will go away, whether you're, Elon Musk or the guy on the street. It'll all equalize. And in my faith, Scripture lines that out with Lazarus. And the idea is to make impact, to be a good steward of the most valuable and only resource that you really do have, and you don't know how much you do have of it, to be a good steward of it and to maximize it, and to use all those other arrows, whether it's your talent, your money, the connections, your Rolodex, whatever, to maximize that time here for that impact. Because I will tell you, I have met with the most wealthiest people on the planet, and I've met with the most poorest people on the planet. And I would tell you that happiness is not contingent on those conditions. It's contingent on those who maximize their peace and the possibilities that are given to the little resources that we all do have. So I appreciate your time and appreciate your efforts here.
Amen. Good man. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful wisdom. Let's tee up the commercial. And as we always say, we'll see you next time.
Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source. On San Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM. And Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then.